What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got more Blood Hunt. With this one coming by way of the first of a new 3-part miniseries tie-in called The Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt. But when this Blood Hunt event kicked off, Spider-Man enjoyed getting to really unload on these vampires, since there was no gray area on who was bad when it comes to the vampires. That is, though, until he ended up coming face to face with the human element of this event. And so many innocent people have been turned into vampires now. And because of that, this isn't so fun anymore for Spider-Man, since now the person that he's punching could have been someone's loved one just the day before, which makes this kind of hit different. And if you missed that issue or any other from this Blood Hunt event, then I'll place a card at the top of your screen right now. And I'll put a link up at the end of the video as well. But it was also in that last Spider-Man issue where, in the very end, Spider-Man came face to face with the Lizard. So if you guys are ready to find out if the Lizard King ends up being a major player here, and what's going on with Morbius, someone who you would expect to be very prominent in this event, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So we picked this issue up with Spider-Man already engaged in a fight with the Lizard. And he really doesn't have time for this with the whole vampire apocalypse happening right now. But the Lizard won't let Spidey get away, so he's forced to keep fighting the giant reptile. But when Spidey finally takes a step back and waits for the Lizard to charge him, he doesn't. He just stands there like a zombie. But that's when Misty Knight shows up and tells Spidey that he was just trying to get his attention. And now Spider-Man is even more confused about why Misty Knight would even be teamed up with the Lizard. But strange times make for strange bedfellows. And right now, they need Spider-Man's help. And initially, he tells her that he doesn't really have the time to help them since there's so many people in danger right now. But this is the solution to that, she tells him. Because they have a cure. Her and Colleen had gotten a tip that Dr. Michael Morbius was working with the Lizard on a cure. So they tracked him down, but they were too late. Apparently, someone else wanted the cure too, and sent in a bunch of vampires to get it. They also snatched up Colleen and Dr. Mike, so Misty and the Lizard are looking for all the help that they can get and getting them back. And Misty was at least able to get a tracker on Dr. Mike though, so they at least have the element of surprise on their side. So Spidey decides to join in on their rescue mission. But when he sees the location the tracker leads them to, boy, it sure is a whole lot of vampires around. Sheesh. Misty, though, was able to pull up the specs on this building, and it's 83 floors. But from the tracker's location, it looks like their guy is on the 46th floor. But they've got no idea how many vampires are actually on the inside with them. So Spidey decides to web ahead to check it out. And as he searches, he thinks that there's more to this story than what Misty Knight is telling him. But he's gonna go along for now because he knows that this isn't something that he can fix on his own. But when he gets to the window for the 46th floor, there's nothing there but the flashing tracker left behind. So he flies back down to Misty and tells her that it was all just a distraction. But then Spidey notices as the Lizard takes off in a hurry, and he thinks that maybe the Lizard might have a way to find him, so he and Misty follow behind him. And he pretty much outruns them, but they're able to track him to a church. And when they go inside, it's strange. Because according to Misty, every other church, mosque, and synagogue is packed with people fleeing vampires. Why is this one empty, she asks. But then a door opens up to the basement of this building, and the Lizard pops up out of it. He wants Spidey and Misty to come down and check out what he's found. It's a secret underground lair. Apparently, this is where Morbius had been hiding out. And Spider-Man realizes that this must be a Beyond facility. Monica Rambeau must have missed something when she cleaned house. But Misty checks the computers to see if they can figure out where they took Colleen and Morbius. Lizard, meanwhile, heads off again, but this time Misty has Spider-Man keep an eye on her while she finishes her search. Plus, some of Beyond's cameras are still active. But he runs back up to the top of the church, and as the banging at the door starts to get harder and harder, is broken down by a horde of vampires. And Spidey thinks that they're safe since they're in the church, but this is a Beyond facility and not a real church. So the vamps come inside without any hesitation, and now another fight is on. And Spidey yells down at Misty that they've got trouble, but she still needs a few more minutes to get them a location. But Spidey and the lizard are able to buy her that time that she needs. And then Spidey refills the door space with his webbing, and then Misty directs them to an alternate exit, and they're able to make their escape. But Misty was able to get some footage of them uptown, and some addresses that might help them turn something up. And Spidey offers to go ahead and check them out, but Misty stops him. There's somebody that Spidey should meet first, and they travel to a church. And there we meet Father Matthias. And she tells him about their mission and needs him to bless their weapons. Meanwhile, a rogue vampire tries to attack them at the church, but this is sacred ground, so that vampire instantly bursts into flames as he crosses the border. Spider-Man, though, still has doubts about Misty's plan, because blessed weapons will be an endgame for these vampires. But they really don't have much of a choice, according to Misty. Until they get that cure, then it's us or them. And Father Matthias is more than willing to help them out and give them some holy water for their journey and bless what he can. But he can't bless her gun, though. To which Misty, of course, understands. But she does have Spidey give up his web refill cartridges for the father to bless. Meanwhile, though, Spidey decides that he wants to go check something out first, before they go any further, so he takes off. There's something that's been bothering him. Why was it that a horde of vampires ambushed him at that Beyond Underground lab when there were plenty of easy pickings all over the city? He trusts Misty, but he knows there's something missing from this picture. So he goes back to that lab and that computer that Misty was working on to see what he can figure out. And when he checks the computer, Maxine Danger's name and picture come up. And he wonders what this has to do with Morbius and his cure. What does Maxine Danger have to do with vampires? Maybe Misty will show another card, he thinks. But he heads back to the church to meet back up with Misty. And he notices that the streets seem to have cleared up now. And his first thought is that people must have gotten a message to find some shelter. But he's less hopeful when he sees where they've really gone. As Spidey arrives back at the church, and now all of the vampires have converged on him. Spider-Man thinks that Father Matthias was right earlier when he told Spider-Man that this was gonna be a very long night. And that is the end of the main portion of this story. But we do have more. As meanwhile, we get a look in on what is happening with Colleen and Dr. Mike as they're handcuffed in the back of a Beyond food truck. But Colleen keeps a hairpin up her sleeve, so she's able to pick the locks on her cuffs. And then she does the same for Morbius, who's impressed and wonders what other tricks she has up her sleeves. She decides to keep those to herself, though. But then they notice that they've stopped. And outside of the truck, once they pulled into the garage, the vampire guards go to get their prisoners from out of the back of the truck. But as soon as they open the back door, out come Colleen and Morbius making their attack and escape. But they can't get out the way that they came in, so they decide to go search for an elevator that Morbius noticed. And as they head towards that elevator, Colleen wonders if Morbius had any idea of who it is that could be behind this. But Morbius has none, nor does he know why Colleen and Misty Knight stormed his underground laboratory. They do end up finding that elevator though, but when they take it up and exit, they quickly get an idea of who's behind this. An entire corporation run by vampires. And of course, there's a huge fight that ensues. But then the vampires all stop and Morbius realizes that means their master must be approaching. And Colleen thinks that this is the perfect time to escape. But then she's snuck up on from behind and bitten by their master, who then has her taken away and then reveals himself to Morbius. Then he apologizes to Morbius for the circumstances of their meeting. But he wonders if Morbius is at least impressed. And Morbius is indeed curious more than anything else. This definitely was no small undertaking, but he also has no idea who this guy is, which doesn't surprise this guy. When he was alive, he tells Morbius his name was TJ. a forgettable name for an insignificant man, a lackey for the Beyond Corporation. But now he goes by Theocritus, and this is his startup, Hemoglobin Inc. And what he wants with Morbius is to help him finish his cure once and for all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got more Blood Hunt. This time with issue 2 of the 3-issue tie-in series Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt. So when the issue kicks off, Morbius is being shown the tour by TJ, the former Beyond Corporation employee of his now Hemoglobin Inc. And here they've been using what they know of Morbius's mutation as the basis for a few different products. The first product is called Lure, and it's a pheromone that draws vampires to whoever's wearing it. And it's how TJ was able to build up his workforce so quickly. His second product is called Change, and it turns healthy humans into vampires, like Morbius. And the last product is called Cure, but it's only an 85% solution, and the reason that they need Morbius's help. But he questions why they need his help, because he's been at this for years and he's nowhere near finding a cure. But TJ tells him that it's because his research started in a different place than theirs did. Their serum returns a vamp to their senses and controls their hunger, but it only lasts a few days. So eventually Morbius agrees to this partnership, as long as their goals remain aligned. And then TJ drops that famous Morbius movie joke, "It's Morbin time." But Morbius doesn't find it funny, and he even threatens to dismember TJ the next time he says it. Meanwhile, though, he walks right past the caged up Colleen as his tour continues. And then we pick up with Spider-Man as he notices that these vampires all seem to be following the lizard, and he wonders why. But he's got to figure all that out later, because the vampires are all dangerously close to crossing onto this church's land. And Misty readies the people to get ready to fire their holy water guns. And the holy water guns are hilarious, because yeah, they probably work at first, but how long before they're all out of water and need a refill? These people don't seem like they have too much military training, and they probably don't know how to cover one another as they refill, and they probably just panic. But if you remember when this event began, Spidey had got a taste of the human element from these vampires, and he doesn't want to use the holy water since it'd be a permanent death sentence for the vamps with no chance of saving them. So Spidey decides to create a wall of webs using the street lights, blocking off the vampires. And then Spidey figures that he and the lizard will head to Central Park. He's got a plan and wants to see if the vamps will continue to follow the lizard. And he has Misty follow behind. And as they take off, Spidey notices that they are in fact still following after the lizard. It must be some kind of pheromone or something. So he convinces the lizard to hop into the water to change its scent up and see if it'll stop the vamps from following. Meanwhile, Spidey uses his webs to try and web up the horde of vamps, but he runs out of webbing, and he remembers that he had never got his refills back from Father Matthias, who was supposed to be blessing him to take out the vampires. But then the lizard hops out of the water just in time to help Spidey fight off the rest of them. Although his dip in the water wrecked his translator that the lizard had been using, so now he's back to just angry roars. But then after they've taken down these vampires, we meet Maxine Danger, the former Beyond Corporation CEO, and she schools them about her former lackey TJ, that people have been going missing uptown, and come to find out TJ was snatching the people up and using a serum developed by Beyond from Morbius's blood to turn them into vampires. But Maxine is more concerned with the fact that TJ straight up stole that formula. But she tells him that TJ will be holding Colleen and Morbius in Harlem, and then she gives them a device to erase all of the data. So when she leaves, Spidey and team decide to go and check out this intel that Maxine just gave them. And not only that, but Misty has Spidey's refills, and she made sure that Father Matthias didn't bless him, so Spidey wouldn't be forced to kill. Meanwhile, back with Morbius as he works on the cure, TJ brings him in an assistant named Whitney. She's in charge of the cure program there. And when she comes into the lab, she tells Morbius how lucky she is to have the opportunity to work with Morbius, and she's a fan of his work. But when TJ leaves, Morbius notices the obvious fear that Whitney is in, and he asks her why she's so scared. And she's like, I'm just not qualified to work on any of this. I haven't even finished my bachelor's yet. So Morbius is like, well, if you're not equipped to do this job, then why did you take it? But she didn't, she tells him. Until last week, she was a phlebotomist. And then she matched with TJ on a dating site. And the next thing she knew, she was a vampire working in a lab. So that's cold-blooded, y'all. A literal date from hell. Sheesh. But this new revelation gives Morbius pause with helping now. And then we go back to Colleen, who's trying to cope with having been bitten. And then we meet a woman in the room next to her named Sarah. And Sarah tries to make Colleen feel better about being here by telling her about all of the times that she's been turned. And it's after the fourth time when it really starts to feel good. And that's when they inject the change into you. So Colleen's now like, wait, they're changing people into vampires? And Sarah's reply is, you say that like it's a bad thing. She was sleeping in her car before they came along. And what company gives their employees a place to live, food to eat, and eternal life? She's geeked up about being here. And as Sarah's called up for her next test, Colleen realizes that she's gonna have to find her way up out of there. And then we pick up with Spidey and team as they case this spot that Colleen's supposedly being held in. And as they come up with a plan to break into the building, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got more Blood Hunt. This time, with Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt issue number 3, and the finale of this series. So we picked this issue up right where the last one ended. And Spidey and Misty's plan is to ram a truck straight through the doors of Hemoglobin Inc. And that's exactly what they do. And once they get inside the building, they decide to split up, as Spidey then follows the Lizard since he seems to have Morbius' scent. While Misty, on the other hand, goes looking for a terminal to upload the virus that Maxine Danger gave them in the last issue. And we then follow Misty in search of that terminal, and she finds one easily. A little too easy. And as soon as she sits down and inserts the virus, she's greeted by Colleen, who's happy to see her partner. But to the surprise of Misty, Colleen is now fully changed, and she tells Misty how much better she feels now. And then we switch over to Spidey and the Lizard as they search for Morbius. And although Spidey thinks that they need to form a plan, the Lizard bursts through a door and goes in swinging. So Spider-Man decides to use the chaos to slip past and find Morbius on his own. Back with Colleen and Misty though, Colleen tries to convince Misty to join in with her and TJ. But we know Misty ain't going for it, so of course Colleen leaps in to attack her friend. But Misty ain't no pushover, and she catches Colleen with a metal arm punch to the face. The Lizard, meanwhile, as he just tears through the vampires that charge at him, finally comes across a big boy vamp that seems to finally be a match for the giant Lizard. But when Spider-Man comes across more vampires, he takes a shot and asks if any of them can point him to Morbius. And believe it or not, someone actually does. A female vampire that warns Spidey that their cure won't fight back the hunger for long, and they didn't choose to be here. But then Spidey manages to find Morbius still in his lab working on the cure. And as Morbius suspects that Spider-Man is here to rescue him, Morbius is not really looking to leave. The biggest challenge that he's had to face with being a scientist is trying to find funding. For years, he's had to conduct his research in the bowels of the city, and now for the first time in a while, he has real equipment to work on. But Spider-Man informs Morbius that this new ally has been turning people against their wills. And not only that, but Morbius informs Spidey that he still hasn't been able to perfect his cure. Sure, he can at least cure the specific strain of vampirism created by Hemoglobin Inc., but not much beyond that. But to Spider-Man, this is still a huge achievement. He can still help to cure the people here that have been turned against their will, at least. So Morbius agrees and decides to help. But then Spider-Man's spidey sense goes off and he knows the danger is coming. So he snatches up Morbius before he can grab the cure, just before the lizard and that big-ass vamp come bursting through the lab with their fight. But Morbius ain't going back empty-handed, and he goes back in to help his buddy Lizard, and then tells Spider-Man to grab the cure, and then to drop a vial into the cooling system so it can disperse from there throughout the building. So Spider-Man heads up to the roof to handle that. Meanwhile, Colleen has now gotten the upper hand in her fight with Misty Knight. But Colleen isn't trying to end Misty. Instead, she continues to try and convince Misty to come to their side. But again, Misty continues to refuse. Meanwhile, on the roof, Spider-Man catches some resistance when he finds TJ up there with a couple of vampire goons with him. He's there to stop Spider-Man from doing something that he'll regret, he tells Spidey. But as TJ begins going into his supervillain monologue, Spider-Man just straight up skips to the end when he pops open the vial and dumps the cure into the ventilation system. He didn't want to interrupt. And now as the cure gets dispersed through the facility, TJ gets super pissed and he sends his goons after Spider-Man, who easily webs them up. But before he deals with TJ, a helicopter then arrives with Maxine Danger, and she comes in reminding TJ of his non-compete clause from his Beyond contract. And she could either destroy him in court, or he can take the cure and come back and work for her again as her assistant. But TJ is not a fan of coming back, so he makes a break for it and chooses option A. But Maxine was prepared for that and has one of her men fire a silver-lined net to snatch up TJ and bring him back while he enjoys the burning of the silver against his body. Then Maxine hands Spider-Man a breakdown of Morbius's data from the cure. They had put it to the side when they scrubbed everything else. And then she tells Spidey that Morbius is free to continue using the lab as long as he likes. And then she takes off just before Misty Knight joins Spidey on the roof. Then Misty tells Spidey that she's found Colleen, and now she's chilling out with the other victims while they figure out a way to help get them all back home. The cure had worked on all of the vampires created by Hemoglobin, but Morbius and the older vampires were still unchanged. But Spidey does have Misty relay the good news to Morbius, that he's allowed to continue his research here as long as he wants, while Spidey meanwhile decides to web out into the city, since he's still got a lot more work to do in protecting the city that never sleeps. And as Spider-Man swings away, he thinks that nothing has really changed in this city. Yeah, they were able to help a few, but it's still pretty ugly out here, and this cure has only been like putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. But his new cure synthesized webs are still a nice little combo that's able to at least help out a small percentage of people. People who had just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now they have another chance at life. Because another chance is as close to a happily ever after than most get. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue and this series. So what did you guys think about this Blood Hunt tie-in series? I kind of gotta admit that I'm not really sure why we got an Amazing Spider-Man Blood Hunt series, since it really didn't seem to move the full event forward much in my opinion. So it really could have just been the main Amazing Spider-Man series with a Blood Hunt tie-in label on it. But all in all, this was a decent series, and it did have some pretty fun moments, I think. As a whole, though, I think this Blood Hunt event has been a success in my eyes, so I'm not mad at this Spider-Man series. But I'd like to know you guys' thoughts on the series and this Blood Hunt event as a whole. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you can do so by stopping by the Comics Icons store and picking up some of this Comics Icons merchandise, including the background music heard right here in this video available for download, or by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership, and there will be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, your voice will be heard during our interactive live streams with yours truly, Well, we could talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic news. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and up to 20% off of Comics Icons merchandise from the Comics Icons store. Plus, we've got tiers to the memberships as well, beginning at just 99 cents. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do any of those, then you can still be a tremendous help to the future of this channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time.